My name is Dr. Felucio. I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling. And today I'm going to be talking to you about some signs and qualities of a good, competent therapist. The first one, which is probably one of the most important ones, is known as the Therapeutic Alliance. And this is the bond between a therapist and the client. And this predicts a great deal of how therapy will turn out. And so when you're in session with a therapist or a counselor, it's really important that a good relationship is formed. It's not a friendship, but you do want to make sure that the therapist that you're seeing and you have a genuine bond. And so sometimes I'll hear people tell me that they didn't click with their therapist, or they didn't feel like their therapist understood them, or they just kept missing each other. And when I hear that, I think, aha, there's probably the Therapeutic Alliance rather was not forged at that time. And so it's really important that when people are looking for a therapist, to make sure that you have enough time to search around. Finding a good therapist doesn't happen overnight. And sometimes the skills may be there for the therapist, but that bonding, that alliance is just not there. And that's okay. Just take your time and make sure that you have the resources and the patience to go through and find one that you work well with. And so again, the Therapeutic Alliance is really important in therapy. And so that's a good sign that therapy is working well. Another sign that you are with a good therapist is that the therapist is taking notes. I've had clients before tell me that they have been in situations where they're seeing a therapist and the therapist is not taking any notes at all. And the reason that that can be concerning is because as therapists, we're supposed to have notes, first of all, and then second, clients have told me that they felt that the therapist was not attentive to their concerns. And so they might have brought something up in one session. The second session, the therapist might ask them the same question again. And that was clearly an issue that should have been noted by the therapist. And so a good therapist is going to be taking notes, not taking notes in a distracting way, but taking notes in a way that that they can remember what they talked about from session one to the next session and the next session. Now, with the rise of telehealth, sometimes you'll see a therapist looking at different screens. I know that that can be really distracting for a client. A good therapist will tell you, hey, I'm going to be looking at multiple screens here for a few seconds, typing notes on one, looking at you on the other. Please don't take this personally or as a distraction. This is what I'm doing. So that, is something that, needs to be discussed with the client, but taking notes is essential. So if you want to make sure that your therapist is taking notes and keeping record of all the important things you talk about from session to session. The next thing that's also important is you want your therapist to inform you of what's going on along the way. And so if a diagnosis has come up or a diagnosis has changed, you want to be part of the process. And that's also really important for your treatment. If you if you are going to seek treatment for what you think is one problem and your therapist thinks something else is going on, they need to inform you about that. So basically, therapy shouldn't be a one-way sort of interaction where it's only you informing the therapist of everything going on and they're passively listening, or the therapist is just telling you everything that's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be dynamic. And what I mean by dynamic, it is a mutual exchange of information. They're telling you information, you're receiving it, and you're giving them information as well. So that's really important. Another important a quality of a good therapist and a good therapy session is you have the therapist is going to validate your feelings, but not do way too much reassuring. And this is especially important when as you as a client have anxiety or OCD or something along that spectrum. I've heard one of the most common concerns that I've heard amongst clients that I've worked with is they've said, my last therapist was great, but they reassured me too much. And at first it felt good, but then that excessive reassurance actually gave me more anxiety because I got too much reassurance. I felt that it was fake. It didn't really give me the skills and the strength that I needed to face uncertainty. And so that's really important. And as the literature with OCD and anxiety disorder shows that giving reassurance actually doesn't help. And so you want a therapist to validate your feelings. And what validation does is that it shows that you are human, your feelings matter. But at the same time, you want that therapist to give you the skills and the resources to help you work through those really challenging situations. And so it's a mix, it's a delicate balance between having compassion, having empathy, but at the same time, holding you accountable and giving you that level of challenge that you need to get through really tough times. And so that's really important for a therapist that you're working with to give you. And so a good therapist also asks for feedback and receives that feedback well. And so from time to time, you'd want your therapist to say, well, hey, how have these sessions been going? How has your how's your therapy process been? Is there anything that I can be doing better to make this a better experience for you? As we all know, as human beings, sometimes feedback is not the easiest thing to hear, but it is necessary for all of our improvement. And so good therapists will ask for feedback and take it. Good therapists will also make sure that, the beginning of the video, I talked about the Therapeutic Alliance, which is really good, but they also want to make sure that they don't cross that boundary from professional over to friendship. And so it's really important that while that warmth and that genuine bond is there, that they're still maintaining that professional presence. And so not only in how they interact with you with their words, but just also, dress, speech, everything. When you're interacting with them, you want to know that you're interacting with a professional and not your friend. And so that will be in paperwork that you get, informed consent, where they define to you what those boundaries are, but those boundaries should also be lived out. And like I talked about before, with a lot of telehealth going on, sometimes that can be blurred a bit. There's research that shows that people their inhibitions are lowered when they're on a screen. And so it may be easier to share a little bit more when you're not face-to-face with somebody. And also some clients have said that they found some therapists to be less professional when they are in front of a screen. And so that's just really important to keep in mind when working with a therapist. And so again, these are just some of the qualities you're going to want to look for in working with a therapist. And I'd love to hear any that you feel that I may have missed or any that are important to you. Please feel free to drop some in the comment section below. If you found this content helpful, please like and subscribe. And may you be filled with joy and peace and have a wonderful day.